Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of HorseShow360 podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm here joined with McLain Ward. Thanks for joining me here.
Nice to be here.
We're here at the Kentucky 3-day event. The Dressage 4-star is going on right now. We're sitting in the Kentucky Horse Park Foundation tent, and I'm here with McLain. This is obviously an incredible event. First year it's a 5-star. How do you feel about that? I know you've been here a couple times with us before to beating. It's just a natural progression, right? This is the type of event that should be a 5-star. What do you think?
Well, I think this is great for the sport and the equestrian community here in the United States. Obviously, the Kentucky 3-day event here has had great traction with crowds and audiences, and a signature event of the 3-day season. And to be part of that, we came here a couple of years as a 3-star. Great idea that you had. And it was a fun, entertaining, great sport, and for it to grow into a 5-star is brilliant.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you having you here. Honestly, like, the spectators are something special. We were just talking about traditional events and stuff like that, how to recreate that feel at Aachen, how to create these events that people want to get that feeling of the Masters, Wimbledon, these things in other sports. And it's so unique to have these fans that don't care about the weather, that don't care about anything. They just live and breathe horse court and are so unique to our community. And I get a special feeling having helped in organizing it, standing out there before the start of the Grand Prix tomorrow night, Saturday night. Like, you can't recreate that.
No, you're absolutely correct. As far as the fans enjoying the weather, I think everybody's here in their Irish wet weather boots and hoping for some rain, I noticed.
It's going to be that far.
Exactly, but that's fine. We got great footing in this wonderful facility here in Kentucky that I wish we had more 5-star events here. It's a world-class facility. And yeah, the crowds are great. It's going to be great sports and a pleasure to be part of it.
Obviously, you're well-known in the industry. You've been around forever. All the medals, all the things. But can you give us a little bit of background on yourself, obviously dating back to when you were a kid, how you got started, what drives you, that kind of thing in this world, and what keeps you motivated? How do you keep going like that?
That's a pretty long-winded question. I'm second or third generation in this sport. Obviously, both of my parents did this professionally. My father was a very successful Grand Prix rider, my mother a trainer, and also quite a good rider. And
the lessons I took with your father were pretty influential for you.
Yeah, he was actually
those points when
he was a brilliant coach. He had a special way, and but my first coach was my mother, to be honest. My style of riding, my position, which I think is my strongest asset, came from my mom, so I owe a great debt of gratitude to her. But yeah, my career took off pretty early on as a teenager, and I loved it. And I had a very easy vision of where I wanted to go. That was always a great benefit. I think about that now in reflection. What made certain things come together, what more than anything got you through the difficult and challenging moments, was I always had a very clear vision of where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do in the sport. And I think something that's very common in people who you see are successful at any given pursuit, they really, in some ways, can't live without reaching those goals to some degree. And I've always thought like that. I always thought I will go to the Olympics and I will win medals. And whether it happens this time or the next time or in 10 years, we will get there. And I was lucky to be able to convey that dream and those goals to people around me, who I think got on board and were engaged in that. And I've had an incredible support and incredible team around me from the very beginning. And
fought through a lot of challenges throughout everything. You've been very vocal about sports psychology, all of the above. Like, how do you do those things to make those decisions?
It's never an easy road. We all face challenges, different challenges in our upbringings, in creating opportunities, and in missteps. And I've had all of those. It's funny when you have the right mentality, and you have great people supporting you. You find a way to get through those challenges, and you create other opportunities because of them. And in reflection, you appreciate the challenges. I don't know if that's true in the moment. In the moment, there's some dark days and some moments that you're not 100% sure you're going to solve. But I always say, if I'm remembered for something that isn't perfection, it's trying to do better tomorrow. Yeah. And I think that's been a constant theme in my career and hopefully in my life. And lucky we've made more right decisions than wrong ones, and we've learned from the wrong ones. And as I said, it's not a one-man show. I've had great support, not only from my direct family and my direct team around me, but also people who have really gotten on board with the dream and supported us with great horses and great opportunities. And it's been a really blessed career, and I hope there's a little more left. And I've also been able to share it now and mentor a number of top young up-and-coming stars, to be honest, people who I think are more talented than me, and allow them to gain from my experience and our knowledge and education. And soon enough, my kids also are coming up. My two daughters both are riding, and that's going to be a whole nother phase in the career.
I mean, it's, I always say to people, we're lucky that this is a sport of longevity. I mean, you can be in it for a long time. You can feed at it at a high level for a long time. And it's easy for anybody that's as competitive as you are, or anybody in this sport or any sport for that matter, to be impatient as well. It's really easy to be impatient. And it's the hardest thing to take a step back and say, this leads to that, and the next thing, and the next stepping stone, and all that experiences pile onto each other and lead to a body of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really important.
And again, you make a great point there, patience, but still driving at the same time. And what I do for the younger riders that I have a little bit around my circle, or that I can give some advice to, that I'm excited about their careers, is, look, I'm the guy in the trench with you. I know what it's like. I've been there when things aren't going well. I always say to people who are close to me, there's going to be some dark nights in hotel rooms all by yourself with your own demons, and I can share my experience, how I got through that, and then that shared experience for them says, wow, he made it work. He got through that moment. He understands, and look how it worked out. And that doesn't mean it worked out like that every day. It certainly didn't. And the way I think it looks for people from the outside is often very different than the actual experience. I remember a cute story many years ago when my wife and I were first dating, when Lauren and I were first dating. And, Lauren at that time, Lauren's 7 years younger than me. So when we were in our 20s, that's a considerable amount of time. And it was right in the height of Sapphire. I remember the first few months we were together was during the Florida circuit. And we got to the end, and I always had this place I went, and I took a few moments, and she came and sat next to me, and she goes, this looks very different from the outside, and when I looked and you were riding Sapphire and everything was great, and victories and podiums, we always like to say, and nothing could be better. And I realized, well, all of that's great. The stress on the inside is very different. And, but it's also something you welcome. I always say it's a little bit my drug. I have to have it, but it's killing me at the same time.
Well, but the people that succeed at anything are the people that push past time.
Absolutely. You push past it, and you also find pleasure in it. You find joy in it. Now, I have to say, at this stage of my career, if I don't feel that knot in my stomach, a little bit that sick anxiety, normally it's not going to be at my sharpest.
Yeah, I'm a little bit this is a horse show podcast. So, I'm a little bit the same way. When I realized I wasn't going to make it good enough as a rider, right? Or for whatever the reasons, I wasn't good at, getting that quantity of high level horses, owners, whatever it may be, that have made my focus events. I had the same mentality. I want to be the best at organizing events. I want to have the biggest events. I want our company to be a championship organizing company. That's always been our goal. It's a little bit the same thing, but when you're in the trenches, the stress and everything like that, I think no matter what you're doing to a high level, it's always going to be there. And you got to push through it. You got to learn from it. And every experience leads to the next. And that's
absolutely. All of the sports psychology that you've touched on, all of the pursuing excellence, it can be in any field. It's whatever your field of choice is. And listen, there's a lot of things that have to come together. To be frank, I think there's a couple of variables that are across the board. Hard work. People love to talk about hard work, and this is a given. And most of the successful people I meet, whether it be in sport, business, production, hard work is just assumed. They don't think about it, but they don't think about it as hard work. I would like to think that most people would comment on my career as an incredibly diligent hard worker. I don't notice that as the quality that I'm putting on the table, because that was a given. It was something that I just did. And I think you see that. Yeah, exactly. Nobody's nobody's
Simple
inviting you to the
but
podcast.
It's not easy to do it. It's not easy to do.
Exactly.
You know, but you touched on a couple things before I was even going to ask you about it. But obviously, the family dynamic. Like for me, my wife Michelle, our kids, it's a little bit similar. I can see. You know, I've known each other for a long time. Speak to everybody about this because this is a big factor for me. Like the fact that like I know that my family always comes first. My wife comes first, Michelle, my kids, everybody on my team knows that when it's family time, even though I'm always available, that kind of thing. I think you've done a really good job, at least perceptually, of also prioritizing family rather, you know, I want to say unlike other top riders in our sport that literally live and breathe riding, competition, competing all the time. It feels to me like you balance that a little bit better, which is so difficult to do in our industry or in any sport. Like when you look at top athlete in tennis, golf, all these things that travel week in and week out or across the globe, you have to sacrifice so much of that to your family. But it seems like you have found a pretty good balance with Lauren and your kids. Obviously, your kids are into riding as well, so that helps a little bit. But I feel like you compete a little bit less than the other top 10 riders in the world.
I mean, I always have actually competed a little less. I always say, I'm very proud that I was #1. I wouldn't mind to be there again, but I'm going to do it on my terms and my schedule. I think the first key, and you hear this a lot in life, is pick the right spouse. You know, so that's
say that again.
That's the key to life, right? You know, pick the right partner. And I certainly did. You know, Lauren and I are going on 20 years together, and 2 beautiful little girls.
Isn't that long?
20 years, yeah. And I knew on our first date, she thought I was nuts, but I remember the traffic light we were at on our first date, and I thought I'm going to marry this woman. And
I had the same reaction with
yeah.
Michelle. We've only been together almost 7 years, but I wanted to be with her for over 20.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We'll keep that on the QT.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, pick the right spouse in life, and the right partner is going to make a big difference. And I think particularly when you're incredibly passionate about something and your chosen field of pursuit is something that takes a lot of dedication, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy. If you don't have a partner who totally understands that and even more is part of that,
Sure.
you know, I don't think that's going to work. So while I'd love to say I found some great balance, what I found is a great partner who is actually, in her own way, as much pursuing this as I am. We have our roles in our family. My wife, reality, is the main caregiver of our children. She that is her daily, you know, focus and her pursuit. And then, you know, all the pieces come together. And there was actually a very cute story. I remember when we were getting ready to leave for Tokyo Olympics, and you know, that had been obviously a very, I would say, interesting time for many people in the world with COVID. And in the horse business, it was actually not as stressful a time as it was for many people in the world. So I can't complain, but we were going to be gone for a month. And at this stage in my life and my career, you know, things have worked out well enough. We have a beautiful life at home. We live on a beautiful property. We have a beautiful home. We have a beautiful family life. And I was getting ready to go, and I said, it's getting a little bit harder to leave for these long periods of time, you know, to be away from the girls, to be away from this quite comfortable existence we have. And her comment was, you know, go and do what you do. That's why we have this life. And so there's never guilt.
Yeah.
There's never guilt. There's never guilt from me to her that she's focused on the girls and maybe can't be with me in Rome in a couple of weeks, which is nice as a married couple. It's a wonderful place to be. And at the same time, there's no guilt that I'm out there still pursuing my career and doing what gives me a great deal of
very
fulfillment.
similar dynamic for us. The only difference is, honestly, Michelle sacrificed pretty much her career for our business and the way we you know, we're so busy organizing.
You have gratitude in that, right? You have gratitude.
And so very similar setup for us. The only difference for us is we've made a conscious effort to literally do it all together. We travel together, we go to shows together, the kids come with us. Yeah. That's just a slight difference for us.
We would love to do that.
That's just because Michelle and I, the way we care for each other, we just like to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to always do that. You know, when you're competing internationally, that's a little more complicated.
Yeah, of course.
And my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, has got a budding career. She's showing about 4 or 5 ponies every week. So I say that the 5-star Grand Prix is, second on the list. So
For sure. Cool. Well, I know everybody out there listening would appreciate these family dynamic stories because it's such a critical part of trying to figure out how to navigate in this industry.
absolutely.
And especially as you get older, those are more important things. You touched on that you'd like to be number one again. Is that a specific goal, or you're literally just going to continue doing it on your own terms?
It isn't a specific goal. I mean, I've always wanted to do the sport on my own terms, and if that is a thing that happens, that's a nice bonus. I reached that spot once. I don't think it's the main focus of most of the top riders. I think winning the big events of the world, winning championships is the main focus. You do probably have to compete a bit more to really be number one. And that's maybe not the right moment in my life right now for that. And like I said, I enjoy the majors. I enjoy the big days. I don't need to show every single week of the calendar.
It should be a major.
Absolutely. I think, why wouldn't it be? But I feel that the focus is on that, and if I have a superstar horse in the next few years that can win those biggest of events and I can get there, that's all the better.
Yep. Horse show related, obviously I got into the business because I was, to be honest, a little bit like you, very vocal, always the organizers, very opinionated on what was right and wrong out of events. And I've developed my business hot with that. We've had a lot of conversations about that. Is there anything in particular that comes to mind for you that you would like to see different out of American horse shows and related to pretty much just high performance?
Well, I think there's always a balance, right? We talk about high performance sport, and we also talk about the economics of making an event work, and you're unrealistic if you don't try to find that balance. And you're also unrealistic as an athlete, particularly kind of the top level athletes, if you don't understand organizers have to find that balance. And I get that. The traditional American model of show jumping, right, is a pay to play model, right? All of the smaller divisions are what support the high end sport. And that's a model that is quite successful, to be frank.
Big box horse show.
Yeah, and it's a model that works. Series of shows, one location, less logistical hassle, numbers of entries. And it's a model that works across the board. And you're seeing it come more that direction in Europe because you're not relying on finding, new sponsors every year or packing the seats every year. The best events are ones that find a balance, right? That understand that there has to be these supporting events to build an economic model that's sustainable, while still making the efforts to develop an audience and a fan base.
Is there something specifically that you can't stand out of events that you wish were different? Anything particular that comes?
I mean, there's always things that get under your bonnet a little bit. I was actually, you were making the point that it was very opinionated about shows. I don't think I'm opinionated. I just think my idea is correct. So
what's the difference?
I
know what I've noticed.
There's a lot of people with opinions that I think have the wrong idea.
Whenever you're approaching me without something, to be fair, I can be straight with you, honest with you. I always know specifically your needs. Like you're speaking your needs for you and your horse.
Yeah. Well, for sure, you're always a little self-interest, right? But in general, I have to say, my needs are typically, I think, the greater good for the high-end sport. Sometimes they don't encompass all of the needs of the rest of the event. But I think when organizers can produce high-level sporting events, can create a spectator experience, can create, horse-friendly, behind-the-scenes environments, and also groom-friendly and athlete-friendly, as well as a good owner experience. And then also develop a great supporting business of running a horse show. That's the goal. What ends up happening is events go one of two directions, I find sometimes. One is it's all about the business model and very little focus on the actual show. Or they're so focused on the show, their bottom line doesn't work and they eventually go out of business.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a little bit about it earlier. You mentioned, we were talking about World Cup finals and the prep for that and everything like that. And you were curious as to a few details of our plan for next year. And it seemed like your focus, which actually I was quite surprised, your focus was on really the general rider experience. I mean, you're talking, you would like events to look out for the riders in greater detail.
Well, I mean, I would say when I say riders, I say grooms, riders, horses, and owners, or you could even go a step further and say, the stakeholders, right? So you have this core group of people, that's the sport, right? Those are the the athletes. But in our sport, athletes encompass all of those people, all of those factors. So if you provide a safe environment for the horses where we can train, warm up, and compete the horses in the best possible way, you provide a great experience and have great respect for the grooms and the staff that are working harder than anybody. The owners of these great horses, particularly in the United States, that are making huge efforts economically to support us and chase these international dreams. Most right. Let's also give them a great experience, and as well allow us to put on a great show that's going to make it easier for you to provide a spectator experience, right? If we're in a good place and we're able to do our job and play the game well, we're going to put on a better show, which is going to be easier to sell. In any sport, when the sport is great, the spectators love it. So these things, for me, go hand in hand.
We got to do things like autograph signing. So.
You do, yeah, absolutely. As long as you request and on demand, we'll be there.
What put you on the spot a little bit? You probably won't say it, but is there an event, a high performance event that sticks out to you that you can really say you'd never go back to? Would you be willing to say it, what that is?
There are, for different reasons. Unfortunately, there's some nice events that are just, in a bad weather cycle, which is a big problem. There's some events in Europe that I do think great efforts are made, but, running an event in the, late spring in Northern Europe, I've just, too many times I've gone and been rained out. So I don't want to say specific because I don't think it's a lack of effort. It's just a challenge, an environmental challenge.
That's really Horse Show 101, though.
It is,
like you look at weather, time of year, climate. You look at that stuff first.
Of course you do, but there are also calendar restrictions. There are only so many options on the table, and so for some of those reasons, I've chose not to go back. When I talk about globally, I've always enjoyed showing a little bit in the southern section of Europe. I enjoy France and Spain and Italy just as a human being, so I gravitate to those regions of the world. But obviously, a place like Aachen for me is the Mecca. It's the cathedral of the sport.
My next question was, I knew the answer. The best show in the world.
Aachen was the best show in the world, and hands down, and it's something everybody should emulate and aspire to be their own version of.
This American close version
should be.
Yeah,
should be. You have a brilliant venue here. Yep. You're in the heart of a horse country, and it has the bones to become something that is part of the culture. And that's a big thing about Aachen. It's not only an incredible exhibitor experience and athlete experience, but it's part of the culture.
What's the best show in America?
Listen, I think you guys are running a great event here. I mean, this is something that has great potential. From an environment point of view, a horse show like Devon Grand Prix Night is still a wonderful experience. What's been built in Ocala, you have to take your hat off to the Roberts family. I mean, what an incredible endeavor that they've undertaken there for our sport. Wellington, I've always said Wellington is really a mecca of high level sport and where it can be at competitively. They're in a rebuilding phase, and I hope that they step up to meet these other venues that have come up. They've fallen back on their laurels for too long. They fell behind from a venue point of view. There's a lot of engaged people there now because that's where a lot of the backing comes from, is South Florida. So it's the base, So you see regions of the country. Obviously, the Kentucky Horse Park is incredible. You see what's happened in Ocala with the WEC facility. Thermal's made great strides. You've got 5 or 6 families who got engaged for the sport first. Obviously, they want to be sustainable in time, but this is a not for-profit venture. It's for a sustainable sport venture. Wellington's got to catch up. I think the right people might be involved there. I think they are now, but they've got to put it on the ground, so to speak. So all of these venues have great potential. We also have some great signature places, the Hampton Classic, Labor Day weekend, great environment in a great part of the world. Of course it is, and it's been very good to me. As I said, a venue like Devon, it's iconic. But
You're mentioning a lot of events, but not specifically what your just opinion is the best in America. You would say Devon or all the things included.
I think right now we don't have an Aachen because we have facilities like Aachen, but don't run an event quite like Aachen. And we have environments like a Devon or a Hampton Classic, but obviously the facilities are not quite, So they have pros and cons. It's hard to say one. I think the sport actually, in a way, is very, very healthy because these events have to compete with each other now. Wellington can no longer fall back on the fact that the high end of the sport is there in the winter, and a lot of people own homes and farms there, right? They need to step up and compete.
Yeah, sure.
You look at a venue like here, the Kentucky Horse Park, great. The venue's here, the platform and the stage is here. Takes people like yourself to create events like we have here this weekend. So I think everything has to push.
The level of multi-million-dollar Grand Prix, things like that.
Yeah.
This
Could
for
step
me
outside,
has potential
step ahead.
to be that, and that's ultimately the goal. And
All the boxes are not checked at any particular event in the United States as of yet.
Yeah.
Aachen checks all the boxes, right? So that's why I say that should be the goal. Geneva, indoor venue, checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
So when you look at saying, what is the best event, many of them have many pros, many things that you say are really being done well, and things that need to also continue to improve.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you having this conversation with us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for tuning in for another episode of HorseShow360 podcast, joined here today by McLain Ward. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. You can tune in to any of our podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to download the episode on our YouTube channel, HorseShow360 podcast, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much.